All right, welcome everyone to our Learn to Hunt Bear webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Right away, we're going to throw things over to Bob Knack, our DNR R3 supervisor, to kick things off.
Great, thanks, Dana, and welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you with us this afternoon, and excited to be sharing this material with you about the excellent bear hunting opportunities that we have here in our great state of Wisconsin. The intent of our webinar is really focused on a novice bear hunting audience, and so we're just going to be scratching the surface of some of the details. If you're considering giving bear hunting a try, maybe you were successful in the drawing for a permit this year, and you just want to learn a little bit more about what it takes to give bear hunting a try here in Wisconsin. Those are the things we're going to talk about today. The other benefit of this webinar is that it's being recorded and it can be viewed at a later time, and also used as part of our Learn to Hunt Bear program. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. So next slide, please. So today we're going to be joined by a couple people talking about bear hunting here in the state, and bear biology and management, and all the rules and regulations that go along with it. I'll be joined by Elena Roth, as a DNR biologist. She'll be talking about bear biology and management. Then I'll take it over from Elena and talk about some of the strategies and equipment that we use to hunt bear. And then I'll turn it over to Conservation Warden Matt Mead. And he's going to talk about some of the rules and regulations associated with bear hunting. When we get through that, and we're hoping to do that in about an hour, there should be some time for questions at the end. So without further ado, we'll get started, and I'll turn it over to Elena.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for the introduction, Bob. My name is Elena Roth. I am the wildlife biologist for Vilas County. So I am based out of Woodruff, but work in all of Vilas County. And I happen to be a bear hunter myself. So I'm very excited to be here today to talk about biology, research, and management, and then also hopefully answer some of your questions that you have. And luckily, too, today, a lot of the pictures that you have in the slide are from some of my own hunts. So I'm really proud to be here and excited. Next slide, please. All right, so let's do a general biology primer on black bears in Wisconsin. Black bears are the largest mammal that we have in the state, and I would say they're probably the most charismatic. They're an animal that people are always really thrilled to see, and it's always a neat experience. We have 3 species of bears in North America, but there's only one that we have in Wisconsin, and that is Ursus americanus, which is the black bear. And although it's called a black bear, it does come in very many different color phases. And in Wisconsin, the most predominant color is just that pure black that you see in this photo here. But about 25 to 30% of bears will have some sort of white marking on their chest, and most bears also have a brown muzzle, which you can see in this picture as well. There's a couple different signs that bears leave behind that can help you identify them. One would be their tracks, which you can see in a photo on the bottom right there. That's a front paw of a bear. Bears have what we call plantigrade motion, which means that they walk with their whole sole of their foot pressing down in the earth, and you see those 5 toes that register there. That's similar to how we walk, but it's different than how canids and felids walk. So things like bobcats and coyotes, they will only have 4 toes that show up in their print, because that 5th toe is a little bit higher up on the leg itself. So that's one way to tell. Also, the size is going to be much bigger than the other, even a wolf normally. On the left bottom, we have a picture of a scat. This is a bear scat that I found last summer in the middle of summer. And you can see that it's full of all sorts of different pits, from probably choke cherries and service berries and other fruits. Bears are highly omnivorous and opportunistic. So they're going to eat mostly plant matter, but their diet will consist of meat if they can find carrion to scavenge on. And they're also very effective predators of things like fawns. But most of their their life, they're going to spend time eating fruits and nuts. They will also dig up roots, and they'll eat tender roots from plants, and they'll break apart decomposing logs and scavenge for like ant colonies and grubs. But bears will really eat just about anything they can get into. They're very efficient foragers. Other ways you can tell a bear when you actually see it would just be their characteristic round body. They have erect ears, a short stubby tail. They have large claws that are really excellent for climbing. That's different compared to like a grizzly bear, which aren't as good of climbers. They do have pretty poor eyesight, so they rely really heavily on their sense of smell. That's really important sense for them. And they're very smart. They have good long-term memories. So once they find a food source, they'll continue going back to check to see if that food is still there for weeks at a time. And they can even remember a food source from year to year, which is really incredible. Bears have really important ecological role in helping break down decomposing animals, but also things like decomposing logs when they're scavenging for bugs. And they're really important seed dispersers. So like we see in the scat photo, there's a million seeds in there, and bears travel such long distances that they can actually basically plant trees where they go, which is really cool and a neat characteristic of them. One question that people ask me quite a bit is how can you tell the genders of bears apart? And I would say when they're young, like this is a young bear in the tree. In this photo, it's pretty hard to tell them apart. They can look very similar. Once they get older, there's some more subtle signs that you can use to tell them apart. Boars typically have a very square-shaped head, and their muzzle especially is very blocky. And they'll tend to get pretty long as they get older, and they're going to be really square-shaped and full throughout their whole body. So their shoulders and their forearms are going to be just continuously thick all the way through the length of their body. Sows, on the other hand, don't get as long as a boar. And so when they get fatter and bigger as they get older, they hold a lot of weight in their back end. They have kind of big bare butts, and they'll have bellies that can really start to drag to the ground once they get to be pretty large. They also have a more conical shaped muzzle, and sometimes we call them pinheads because that's kind of what they look like when they get a big head and still have that short, sharp muzzle. And they'll be thinner through their forearms and through their front, again, emphasizing the weight that they're carrying in the back end. A typical male in Wisconsin, an adult male, can range anywhere from 125 to over 500 pounds, and they have a really large home range that can be up to 36 square miles on average. Females, on the other hand, will stay a little bit smaller, and an average female will be anywhere from 90 to 375 pounds, and their home range is only about 7 square miles, and it's going to be considerably smaller when she has cubs that she's raising. Next slide, please. All right, one of the most interesting things about black bears is their ability to hibernate. There has been some sort of discussion amongst scientists on whether we should call it a true hibernation or a form of torpor. And I would say it's somewhere in the middle, but most biologists agree on using the term hibernation. They will occasionally wake up during hibernation if there's a warm spell. If there's a warm spell in early spring, sometimes boars will even leave their den and go out and feed and choose a different den. But typically a female with cubs is going to be staying in the long haul. They typically enter the den about October and emerge sometime in April or May, depending on what the weather is like. They will use just about anything they can for a den. So the typical den in Wisconsin that you would see is going to be under a fallen tree or under a root ball and kind of a dugout excavation like that photo, that second from the right. That's a collared sow, and that's the kind of den she has. On the far left picture, that was a den that was dug under a rock outcropping. That was actually in New Mexico. So that's where the terrain was different there. And then they can even use something as simple as a nest that's just out in the open. So that photo on the right is showing a bear that created a nest out of some cattails in an alder marsh. And I even had a report in a county I used to work in where there was a boar that was denning in the middle of a cornfield. So they're really adaptable, and it's amazing that they can weather those elements. During hibernation, bears drastically slow down their metabolic rate and their processes. So they're only breathing a couple times a minute. Their heart is only beating a couple times a minute. It's truly incredible how slow they can move down those processes. They don't eat at all, they don't drink, and they develop a fecal plug. So right before they enter the den, they eat a lot of really fibrous materials like ferns and grasses, and that prevents them from defecating the whole entire time they're hibernating. And they also recycle their urine and neutralize those minerals. And this has a lot of really interesting research implications for human medical research, because people who are in comas, typically, or other debilitating disabilities, they have problems with things like muscle atrophy, osteoporosis. They could toxic urea buildup can occur. So medical researchers are actually studying bears and their hibernation patterns to see how that could help people who are sick. Females will give birth while they're in the den, and when the babies are first born, they're less than a pound, and they will nurse on the female until they emerge in the spring, and they grow extremely rapidly, and by 6 months, a cub can be already 50 pounds in size. The cubs will stay with their mom for their first 2 years and learn how to forage. Since bears are very smart, there's a lot they have to learn from their mom. So it takes a little while to figure out how to forage and do bear stuff. So they stay with their mom for their first 2 years. After that second summer, the mom will kick them out and they'll have to go find their own home range. Except for a sow with cubs, bears are very solitary, so it's kind of rare to see them hanging out together, except when they're breeding, which is in June and July. Besides being sort of slow to stay with mom for a couple years compared to other wildlife species, they're also not sexually mature until they're typically about 4 or 5. So they're a very long-lived, very slow to reproduce species, which means we need to be very careful in our management and our harvest structure, because it's not like a ruffed grouse that's going to replace its population basically every year with new young. It's slower growing, slower to reproduce. So harvest is highly structured in Wisconsin. Next slide, please. So management. Hunting is our most important management tool, hands down, for bears in Wisconsin. We have, like I said, a highly structured season, and it is highly regulated as well, which Matt will talk about. Our population of bears is growing statewide. We have approximately 30,000 bears in the state, and the population continues to spread southward. We harvested about 3,800 bears in 2022, and luckily the interest in bear hunting continues to grow, which is a really awesome trend, because unfortunately a lot of our other hunting sports are seeing a decline in participation. So to see this increase in interest has really been promising, and is a really good thing for us as both wildlife managers and as sportsmen and women. The graphic on the bottom left shows the basic reason why we have different bear management zones in a state. So you see we have zones A through F, and they're broken apart based on the habitat that exists there, the density of bears, and then also things like the density of nuisance issues that we see occurring. So the picture of Wisconsin on the left that has yellow, that shows all of our rotational crop cover. And you can see it's really heavy in the southeast and the southern half. On the right, you have green, which is depicting forest cover, which would be typically traditionally suitable bear habitat. So in areas like Zone F, there's not a lot of people hunting down there. There's not a lot of bears, there's not a high bear density, so you don't have to wait very long to pull a permit in that zone. Hunters have to apply for preference points and wait a number of years to pull a permit, because there's such a high interest, and we're only harvesting about 3,800 animals a year. Just to kind of put that in context, we sell probably 500 to 600,000 deer licenses a year, so it's really different, and that's why we have those wait times. Zone D, on the other hand, has a huge mix of agriculture and forest, and that's where we tend to see some of our higher agricultural damage problems. So there you have a less of a wait time and a higher permit level, so we can manage the nuisance problems while also providing people opportunity, and they're, in conjunction with there being a high bear population that exists there. So this is a really important thing to consider because they can cause extensive nuisance damage, not only on rotational crops, but on things like beef cattle. And they can also be a nuisance getting into backyards and bird feeders and things like that. So providing people once in a lifetime opportunity where they can harvest an animal, consume the meat, use the bear hide is a much better experience, a much better way to manage than trying to manage individual nuisance bears. If we did not hunt bears in Wisconsin, we'd have many, many more nuisance problems. So that's something that's important to consider. Next slide, please. So lastly, I want to touch on some surveys and research that we do. One of the most important forms of data we receive is from hunters. Every bear that is harvested, you're required to register with the DNR, and you have to provide information on where you harvested it, and then also what sex that animal is. And you are required to submit a premolar, a tooth submission. And amazingly, these teeth can be cross-sectioned and looked at under a microscope, and you can count the rings of their teeth just like a tree to tell exactly how old that bear is. And that gives us really important information on density, reproduction, and helps us estimate our population size, so we're giving appropriate harvest quotas every year. We also do a hair snare study every few years where biologists set up a bait site and they surround it with barbed wire. The bear walks over the barbed wire, we pull that hair, and it gives us genetic information and also serves as a mark recapture to estimate the population in a different way. We also are currently working with the Office of Applied Science on a diet and reproduction study where we are collaring sows and looking at their cubs, taking measurements, and understanding how their diet is impacting reproduction. That little cub there was from a den capture we did in Vilas County this year. And we have a theory that there is such an abundance of food sources in Wisconsin, it's leading to larger litter sizes and larger body weight of individual bears overall. Just a quick example would be I harvested a bear in New Mexico a few years ago that was 200-pound boar. In Wisconsin, that could be as young as a 2-year-old bear, but in New Mexico, that bear was probably 6 or 7 because they have such dry, arid summers and low fruit producing years. It takes longer for them to get bigger and probably smaller litter sizes as well. Finally, we have Snapshot Wisconsin, which is a trail camera network, and that gives us some baseline information on density and distribution of bears. So with that, I will hand it back over to Bob.
All right, thanks, Elena. Great job, and tons of really cool information there on the biology of bears. They're an amazing species, and we're lucky to live with them here in Wisconsin. And so by way of introduction, I guess I was introduced earlier, but I'm the supervisor of our R3 team, which stands for Recruitment, Retention, and Reactivation, and essentially a team that focuses on promoting hunting, fishing, trapping, and shooting here in Wisconsin. And so like Elena, I'm a bear hunter as well, and have a family of bear hunters that I live with, and looking forward to do some bear hunting this fall. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about bear hunting strategies and equipment. And again, with some hunting experience, I've been able to harvest bear using at least the 2 most popular strategies here in the state, over bait and with the use of dogs. And so as Elena mentioned, hunting is a really important management tool, and not only for bears, but for a lot of wildlife species. And in addition to managing a population, of course, there's a lot of other benefits to going hunting that people probably have different reasons for doing it themselves. And so just wanted to stress the importance here of managing a population. And so the slides that follow, I'm going to cover each of these strategies in a little bit more detail. And again, just scratching the surface on each of these. Certainly can go into a lot more detail. And even some of the things I say, some people might think otherwise. As you can imagine, with hunting, there's all different opinions on what's the best approach. And so I'm going to share some experiences that I've had, and we'll talk through each one of these. So next slide, please. So I thought maybe we'd first start talking about the equipment that you might need to go bear hunting. And again, some of you are doing this for the very first time. In Wisconsin, it's legal to use firearms and archery equipment, including crossbows, to harvest bear. And in the world of firearms, you can think of shotguns, rifles, and handguns. We recommend a caliber of a 270 caliber or bigger in rifles to hunt bear. There's no minimum restriction on the size of the rifle you can use. With a well-placed shot, they can be lethal to bears for sure, but we want to make sure that we're using a firearm large enough to efficiently and effectively harvest that bear as quickly as possible. And so we recommend that 270 or larger. On the shotgun side of things, slugs are used in 20 gauge and 12 gauge slugs. Handguns provide a little bit more of a challenge for people that are looking for that experience. And so again, a well-placed shot, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on some future slides on where and what a well-placed shot looks like on a bear. Another consideration that you want to take into is scoped versus other sights. And so there's a lot of benefits to having a scope on your shotgun or rifle, and certainly helps with a well-placed shot. However, depending on the distance that you're shooting at too, a scope can be a little bit of a hindrance as well, in that it magnifies what you're looking at even at the lowest settings. And with a black bear, if it's relatively close to you, you might get a scope full of black fur. And so that can be a challenge, and especially if the bear is moving as well. So depending on your hunting situation, scopes are a good thing. Otherwise, you could look at using some of the other sight options, such as open sights. I mentioned archery equipment that could be used. We do have a 30-pound minimum draw weight here for what legally could be used. And again, with archery equipment or a crossbow, in some cases, the distance to the bear is going to determine which choice here that you make. And with archery equipment, in most cases, the bear needs to be much closer and can provide a little bit more of a challenge to the hunter in being that close to the bear. So it's really up to the hunter to decide what kind of challenge they're looking for, and there's no reason you can't switch between any one of these during the season and while you're hunting. So something to keep in mind. Clothing with each of the hunting techniques that I'm going to talk about, clothing is an important consideration. Certainly, if you're choosing to hunt over bait or a sit and wait approach where you're in an elevated tree stand, you want to be wearing camouflage, covering as much of your body as possible. Don't forget to cover your face as well. If you're going through the efforts to cover the rest of your body, you might as well cover your face too, and try to blend in as much as possible. If you're hunting around bait or sit and wait approach, it's important to be careful with your scent. And many of you here, maybe listening, are probably deer hunters, and so you're familiar with maintaining scent-free clothing, especially if you're an archery hunter. And so that means just being careful with your hunting clothes. You know, don't wear them in the restaurants or the cabin where you're cooking your breakfast, and try to keep all the human scent off of those clothes as much as possible. There's commercial products you can buy and different ways out there of trying to stay scent free, and certainly encourage people to do that if they're going to be hunting from a tree stand or over a bait site. If you're hunting with dogs, a little bit less concerned about the camouflage for that matter, or the scent conditions as well. It's a little bit more important there to make sure that you're set up to traverse through the brush, and wearing clothing that You may not mind getting ripped or torn as you work through the briars, or you can wear, Carhartt clothing or something that's a little bit more protective against the brush to try to hold up a little bit better. Footwear is really important as well, and especially if you're hunting with dogs and you're going to be walking long distances to get to where the dogs might have a bear treed, or in the case of hunting over bait and you shoot a bear and you have to track at a distance, it's important to have good footwear so you're avoiding blisters. And in some cases, especially in northern Wisconsin and our beautiful big woods, you might come across beaver ponds and waterways, and in some cases hip boots are maybe a good idea as well. Or you just get wet, and there's nothing wrong with that either. The next thing I want to talk about was a compass or a GPS unit. Again, you might be hunting in an area that you're not familiar with, and it's very easy to get turned around if you're separated from the rest of your hunting group. And so always important for hunters to know how to operate a compass. And I think it's maybe becoming a lost skill in today's technology world, but the benefits of compasses is that they don't need batteries. And so it's always a challenge if you're in the woods relying on either your phone or a GPS unit and the batteries go dead. And so I really encourage people to learn how to use a compass. It's a bit old school, but it's reliable, and it'll keep you from getting lost. And then some miscellaneous gear that is probably worth mentioning here. And again, it depends on the hunting strategy that you're using. But you can imagine if you were able to successfully harvest a bear, you need to think about how you're going to get that bear out of the woods. And so that can be in a lot of different ways. But you probably want to have some kind of a rope or a drag line with you, or maybe a cart. Bears are probably the most challenging critter, depending on the size, to get out of the woods. And there's a lot of dead weight there. And so certainly give that consideration before your hunt, is to, how you're planning to get that bear out of the woods. When you harvest the bear, always good to have a knife for field dressing. If you want to wear gloves to keep your hands clean, that's a good idea. First aid kit is always helpful. Think about water and snacks, depending on the type of hunting you're doing, the length of time you're going to be in the woods. If you're hunting with dogs, even though you might not be the dog handler or have much to do with the ownership of those dogs, always good to have a dog leash with you. You'll never know when you're going to be asked to grab a dog and secure it. And so having a leash with you helps with doing that. Bug spray, again, our hunting season is mostly in September and into early October, and the bugs can be bad. And so that's something to be thinking about as well. A phone, always good to have a phone. You probably don't need to remind people too much to do that. And a flashlight, again, you never know what situation you're going to get into. And if you run out of daylight, it's always good to have a flashlight to get yourself out of the woods. So next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about a couple of the more common strategies for hunting bear here in Wisconsin. And the first one is hunting with bait, and it's likely the most popular strategy that's used in most years. Most of our bear, or a majority of the bear, are harvested over bait. And if you're going to be doing that type of hunting, there's a number of things to take into consideration. And scouting is really important. And you saw some of the pictures in Elena's earlier slides, looking for tracks, looking for trees where a bear might be scratching, bear hair, droppings, looking for game trails. Food sources are really important. Although we do use in this situation a bait site to attract the bears, that's not the only thing they're eating. And so they do focus on cornfields when the corn is in the milk stage, especially. They also take note of when the acorns are dropping and when the berries are ripe. And so keeping an eye out for all of those food sources is going to help you, find a location that you might want to consider putting a bait site in. You could also talk to locals if you don't live in the area, but you're spending some time there. Maybe get to know the neighbors or talk to folks in town and in restaurants, and sometimes people are very willing to share where they're seeing bears as well. So locating bait sites, you'll want to again use your scouting and looking for habitat that bears will inhabit. And in most cases, they prefer thick cover where they can lay low during the day if the temperatures are a little bit cooler. And so you want to have a bait site that's relatively close to that type of cover. You can use, certainly make use of aerial photos, and many people are using apps to look for aerial photos and look at property lines. Certainly use that to help with your scouting. Bait sites may be tight as well, especially if you are close to that thicker cover. And by tight, I mean with limited visibility from your hunting location to the site. And that's good and bad. It helps hide the hunter, and the bears feel a little bit more secure about coming to the site. However, when bears walk through the woods, they're very quiet, and rarely do you hear them coming. And so if your bait site is too tight with limited visibility, you're going to be surprised when that bear shows up, and you just need to be on your toes a little bit more. So cameras are good to use at bait site as well. Trail cameras, they can help verify the activity that's happening at the sites, including the size and number of bears that are using it. It's also fun to look at the pictures and to see the results of what's happening there. One of the benefits of cameras as well, and Matt's going to talk about a little bit later, is it helps identify if a sow and cubs might be using the bait site as well. And of course, those are illegal to harvest here in Wisconsin. And so it might influence your decisions to hunt that site or not, considering that those bears would not be eligible for harvest. And the last thing with cameras I'd remind is bears use their very, very strong sense of smell. They might pick up on your scent on handling that camera and come and check it out. In some cases, that results in a broken camera. And so take that into consideration as well. There's cages that you can use to maybe try to protect the camera, or you can maybe put it up a little bit higher to make it a little bit harder for the bear to get to it if it wants to. Bait and natural foods. I talked a little bit about natural foods, but baiting is highly regulated here in Wisconsin, and Matt's going to tell you a little bit about that. The point of mentioning is that hunters often experience bears using the bait site right up until a week before the season, and then for some unknown reason to them, the bait site stops getting hit. And we hear that all the time, and maybe you've experienced it as well. And so if it happens to you this year, don't be alarmed. Fairly common. And as I mentioned before, those natural foods come into season, and the bears know that. And so what might be happening is that they're shifting to consuming natural foods, or closer to the season, there might be more hunters in the woods placing baits as well. And the bears just have more options to choose from. So hunting over bait is a big time commitment, as you can imagine, with setting the bait sites and then routinely baiting them and checking cameras. And so it's something to take into consideration when you are thinking about what strategies you're going to use. It can also be very fun and enjoyable. It's time in the woods, and oftentimes you're doing it with family and friends. And so it's a really nice social activity that way. Stand location, keep in mind the bait site and being careful with scent, right? If you're doing the baiting, that bear is probably familiar with your scent, and maybe scent is a little bit less of a concern. However, if somebody else is doing the baiting and you're showing up to hunt, that's a new scent. And so that might cause the bears to be a little bit more cautious, or maybe stop using the bait site. So pick your stand location, try to be downwind of the bait site using kind of the prevailing winds, and obviously use a tree that is able to handle your weight. It's a live living tree, and be safe. And I think Matt's going to talk a little bit about safety as well. I talked a little bit about scent control as well. It's really important here with hunting over bait. And again, if you're new to the bait site as a hunter, you might want to consider leaving an article of clothing, maybe in your tree stand or nearby, that gets that bear a little bit more familiar with your scent being in that area as well. And patience. Hunting over bait is a great time to sit and reflect in the woods, see what's going on around you, and enjoy nature a little bit. So a lot of patience involved with this type of hunting. Next slide. So for a totally different experience, we have hunting with dogs. Equally exciting for different reasons. And the intent here is using dogs to follow the scent of the bear, and that would lead you to a safe shooting opportunity for the hunter. The importance of training dogs it's really important in that these dogs needed to understand their roles. And with hunting with dogs, the dogs are following the scent of a bear. And so bears can really, they're built to travel and traverse northern Wisconsin and their habitats much better than we humans are. And so they can cover a lot of ground. And it's really important to have well-trained hunting dogs to provide an efficient hunt. Dogs are used to locate, to hold, and in some cases retrieve game, not necessarily with bear, but having a well-trained hunting dog is important to the animals that we hunt and to provide a good positive experience for the hunter as well. We have a training season here in Wisconsin. It opens July 1st. Gives the dogs an opportunity to get into shape for bear hunting. It also gives dog handlers an opportunity to train those young dogs, and it gives the older dogs an opportunity to shake the rust off a little bit and get ready for the season. So in a typical hunt, dogs locate bear scent, and that's what they're going by. They're not visually tracking a bear. They're locating the scent, and there's a couple ways that hunters use dogs to find that scent. And one of them is as I discussed already, over a baited site, where very similar, except that the handlers or hunters would bring the dog in and release it at the site after they determine that there's a bear there that they're interested in pursuing. And at that point, it's up to the dogs to do their job and figure out the direction of travel from that bear. And so if you get a chance to hunt with dogs, it's pretty amazing to watch them use their noses and do what they're trained to do. Harvest situations when hunting with dogs, most typically you're going to end up with a bear in a tree, as you can see in the picture here, or a bear on the ground. And oftentimes it's referred to as bait up, where the bear is stationary on the ground and not interested in going up a tree and not interested in traveling any further. Would recommend for novice hunters especially to consider taking a bear, harvesting a bear from a tree. As you can see in the picture, it's very controlled. For the more experienced bear hunters, bears on the ground, as you can imagine, the bear could move. There's dogs that need to be secured and controlled to provide a safe shooting opportunity. And there's just a lot more going on there. And so certainly recommend novice hunters to consider harvesting a bear from a tree. Some of the equipment considerations when hunting with dogs. The dog owners and handlers have a great deal of financial investment into the equipment with these dogs, and all of it is centered around keeping them safe, and that's really important to everyone. And so not only are they required to wear collars with identification on them, but most dogs now and most hunters using dogs will use GPS collars or a GPS tracking system, as you can see on the dog in the lower right. And that allows the hunters to know where the dogs are at all times. And so you can imagine the benefits of that. If dogs are approaching safe, busy roads, you can try to get out in front of them or call the dogs back before they get in that direction. So knowing those locations is really important. We also encourage dog handlers and dog hunters to monitor caution areas for wolf conflicts that can be found on the DNR webpage. And so those caution areas are designed to warn hunters and others who are recreating the area where there's been a conflict between a wolf and dog or a group of dogs. And people are asked to use caution in hunting in those areas. And again, having those collars on your dog help you know where they are. The last benefit that I thought I'd talk about as well with the collars is respecting private property and access. And again, once you release the dog, they don't know where the property boundaries are. So there's some steps that hunters can take to avoid conflict with trespassing and avoid conflict with landowners. And one of them is to plan ahead. If you're going to be hunting an area, don't wait until the day before to talk to the landowner about getting permission. Plan well ahead. I think everybody appreciates that. And ask them if you're going to be hunting in the area, if you can hunt their property. If they say no, a follow-up question then is, well, if my dog goes onto your property, can I retrieve it? In my experience, many of the landowners are willing to do that. And so at that point, if the dog does get onto the property, no guns go, we're not hunting, I'm just going to go get my dog. And if they still say no to that, well then it's recommended to try to find another spot, because you've asked the questions, and I think you're pushing your limits if you would continue to hunt in that area. Easier said than done, certainly know that as well. Sometimes it's hard to move hunting spots and to find places to hunt with dogs, since they do cover quite a large area. Next slide. And real quickly, some other bear hunting techniques that you could use here in Wisconsin, and people do harvest bear using these techniques every year. Less popular. Calling, and that's making the sound of a distressed prey species for a bear that gets them interested in maybe getting an easy meal, and setting up close proximity to that thick cover, paying special attention to the wind, and trying to call them to you. Spot and stalk is another technique that's more popular out west. Hard to do in Wisconsin because of our flat terrain and thick cover, but as you can imagine, simply eyeing a bear in an opening and working into position to get a safe and ethical shot on it. And then sit and wait, which is very common. Again, many of you are deer hunters, and you're probably familiar with sitting and waiting. This is again using that scouting that you did to find food sources, food and water sources, maybe a pinch point in a woods where bears frequent, and trying to basically wait for them to show in front of you. Next slide. Shot placement and other considerations. And again, these pictures do a nice job of showing the vital organs on a bear. Again, that is with any game species, whether it's deer or anything else, the vital organs is what you're trying to aim for to provide a quick and efficient kill. Practicing knowing your range, knowing the limitations of your equipment, and holding yourself to that. And it's really hard to do when you're in the woods and that bear or that deer is just out of range. It's really tempting to try to push your limits. And I found that sometimes patience pays off, and just waiting, and that animal will come into range. Tree versus ground, you're going to have some different looks on bears, especially if they're up in a tree. Might not be as easy to find the vital organs, and it's going to take a little bit of time to line up your shot in that way. So again, practice with your firearm or archery equipment, and know your ranges. I mentioned it earlier, thinking about retrieval. Always good to think in advance on how you're going to get the bear out of the woods. And again, if you've never done it before, it can be a challenge for sure. Temperature and care. Obviously, bears are black, and they have long, dense fur, and our season is in September. And so great caution should be taken after you harvest a bear to get it cooled. Get the hide off of it, get the meat cooled. The last thing you want is any kind of spoilage to happen with the bear that you've harvested. And so if you think of November deer season, people driving around with deer in the bed of their trucks. Can't really do that with bear. Want to keep them out of the sunlight, and again, take care of that meat as soon as possible. The picture here is depicting that large femur bone. As you can imagine, bears have a very dense bone structure, and it's simply telling you to wait. If you look at the difference there with the top photo, the bear's leg is forward and exposing those vital organs, compared to the bottom photo with the bear, his front leg is back, and that femur is protecting the heart and lung area. So best to wait until you have a good view of the vital organs. Next slide. Want to very quickly mention a couple bear hunting opportunities. We have the Learn to Hunt Bear program. There's a couple simple requirements for that. We have an annual application for that. And if you want more information, certainly check out the Learn to Hunt Bear webpage. People need to be 10 years or older with no bear hunting experience and no access to bear hunting through family or friends. There's also opportunities for a wildlife damage abatement and claims program. Again, check out the DNR webpage, and you can keyword search for damage permit hunting, and you can find information on that as well. I know the farmers, especially as Elena mentioned, up in Zone D and other places that have agricultural fields, certainly would appreciate having hunters contact them and try to remove some bears in that area. Next slide. Okay, I think that ends it for me. I'm going to turn it on over to Matt Mead.
Thanks, Bob. Hopefully everybody can hear me. But like Bob said, my name's Matt Mead. I'm the warden here in Vilas County. Been a warden for about 19 years. So while I don't bear hunt personally, I've been working with the Learn to Hunt Bear program for probably 15 to 16 years. Teaching people how to bear hunt and going out with them and kind of teaching the ropes. So very familiar with bear hunting, and then obviously working in this career field for so long, certainly picking up a few things along the way. So the point of me speaking today is to kind of give a brief overview on some of the bear hunting rules and regulations that go with bear hunting. And I think Bob mentioned it already, but bear hunting is a highly regulated sport. It can be a lot for people to kind of start up on if you're new to the sport. There's a lot of regulations that go with it, and there's a lot of subtle nuances. So the point of this presentation, like Bob had mentioned, was just to kind of give a brief overview of the rules and regulations. Certainly not an all-encompassing talk about the rules. If you're looking for specifics, obviously reach out to a local law enforcement game warden, or you can consult the regulation book, or actually speak with somebody that bear hunts regularly, because there's a lot of stuff. And like I said, a lot of subtle differences between the sport of, let's say, deer hunting versus bear hunting. So there's a lot to it. So we're going to kind of briefly touch a little bit about the general overview of the rules and regulations. So the first thing I want to talk about is our framework. Bear hunting is unique in that it splits our season on who hunts first. And like Bob had talked about, the user groups being hound hunters and bait sitters being two different groups. They split every year who gets to hunt first. So on the odd numbered years, like this year being 2023 being an odd numbered year, the hound hunters are going to hunt first. And the season usually begins in early September and then it'll run through mid-October. So this year in 2023, the hound hunters are going to get to hunt first. A short time after that, the bait sitters will then join them and hunt at the same time as the hound hunters. And then to wrap up the season this year, just the bait sitters are going to be able to hunt for the last week or so. So the difference is pretty unique and pretty significant depending on what type of style of hunting and you're going to be doing. But regardless of which method you use or who hunts first, both hunting groups get the same duration of days to hunt each year. It just switches on who gets to hunt first. So it's not like one user group gets to hunt longer than the other one. They get the same amount of days. It just depends on who gets to go first. And the reason for this split season framework is to kind of balance harvest opportunities for these two different popular hunting styles and reduce any potential interaction or conflict. And truth be told, it's very popular among the bear hunting community to kind of get their own start off, and they can kind of judge when they want to draw a tag. So it's a very popular system, the way we have our split season framework set up here in Wisconsin. Next slide. Okay, the next thing we'll talk about is actually the license and authorizations to go hunting. So clearly you need a license to go hunting, but that starts back in December when you apply through the department to either draw a preference point or apply to draw a Class A kill tag. If you're drawn as a winner, similar to the turkey season, we send out a postcard. The department will send out a postcard sometime around February to let you know that you're a winner and that you're eligible to go purchase a Class A kill tag. The one caveat to this is make sure that you go and actually purchase the license. I've seen several people make the mistake of getting the postcard, assuming that's their authorization, and they go hunting, and then we find out later down the road that they never took the step to actually go buy the license. So make sure that is part of the program. If you get the postcard and you're going hunting, make sure you go purchase your authorization. And you can do that on the Go Wild system, similar to our other licenses and authorizations. Bob mentioned this, the time difference, depending on what part of the state you're hunting in, what zone you're hunting in, is pretty significant. If you're hunting up north in zones A and B, it can take anywhere from 9 to 12 years to draw a tag. But if you're hunting in some of those other zones, D or C or E, you can draw a permit about one every other year, or sometimes every year, depending on how the system works for that year. So it's very variant depending on where you're hunting in the state, if you can draw a tag. These tags that you're allowed to purchase, these Class A tags, you can print those out at home. Once you purchase them, they're on plain white paper, similar to our fishing licenses and other approvals that we're allowed to print at home. You can go ahead and print those out and carry them with you. So that is the one big difference, is if you are going to bear hunt, you must carry a paper copy with you. You can't not have that on you, and there's a reason for that, and I'll explain it in a minute, but you have to carry a paper copy with you in the field while you're hunting. An electronic copy on your cell phone is not going to be valid, so make sure you print that carcass tag out and take it with you when you're going hunting. We have an example there on the screen of kind of what a tag would look like for a normal bear hunt. There are differences in our tags. If you are participating in, let's say, a learn to hunt, the tags are going to look a little different. They're going to ask you a little different information, a little bit more information about the harvest, but that's generally what our tags are going to look like. The next bullet point there talks about, if you're successful in harvesting a bear, make sure you validate your tag. And that, for most of our tags, is simply ripping off the bottom portion to validate that tag. And that completes the validation process. It basically showing us that a bear was harvested, this is a validated tag, and you move on to the next step. So make sure you rip off that bottom portion and validate your tag if you harvest the bear. The other big difference, bullet 3, we'll talk about compared to our deer hunting regulations now, is if you leave the bear, you got to tag your bear. So if you leave the field to go get a truck, go get a cart, go get some help, you need to tag the bear. People tag bears in all different type of areas. A lot of them use the tongue to tag the bear. The one thing we want is to make sure that tag is legible. So we ask that folks carry maybe a small plastic Ziploc baggie with them, make sure that tag is still legible. If law enforcement happens to come upon that bear in the field, you know who that bear belongs to. So that is one big difference that folks need to be aware of. Got to have a paper copy. Electronic copy doesn't work. And to make sure you tag your bear if you leave it. Next slide. Okay, so you got your bear. The next step is going to be registering your bear. We want this for biological purposes. Obviously, Elena talked a little bit about that, but registration is required by 5 p.m. after the day of recovery. It's not necessarily the day you shoot it. Sometimes there's some tracking involved and other things that go along with it. But 5 p.m. after the day of recovery of that bear, you need to register your bear. Okay, don't get too excited. And we've seen this from time to time. People get excited. they want to take pictures, they want to show friends, and we get all that. But make sure you don't forget that 5 p.m. deadline the next day to register your bear. Registration process is pretty simple, similar to the deer one. A phone number is listed there on the screen. The Game Reg phone number offers you a chance to register your bear, or you can do it online at gamereg.gov. That process is pretty simple. They're going to ask you for the zone of harvest. They may ask you for the game management unit, where you're registering your bear at, where you harvested your bear. So pretty simple process. Confirmation number is vitally important that you hang on to. So the Game Reg system will issue you a confirmation number to retain for your records. And once the bear is registered, just keep the carcass tag and the confirmation number with the meat until it's all consumed. So that's really the registration process for the bear from beginning to end. The last requirement, and I'm not going to hit on it too much because Elena already did, but there is a mandatory requirement of successful hunters to send in these premolar samples. The department will send you a manila folder. The Class A winners will receive that in the mail prior to the hunt, explaining how to extract these molars, some of the reason for sending in the samples. And like Elena said, it has a lot to do with biology, aging, and developing a bear population estimate statewide. So that's your registration process. Next slide. Okay, bear baiting regulations, and we're just going to briefly touch on some of them, but the first one is, when can you start baiting? And that's April 15th. Every year you can legally start baiting. This, of course, is weather dependent, zone dependent, where you're at. A lot of us folks in the north can't even get out the doors in April, let alone start baiting for bear, but folks in other zones certainly can. So weather and zone dependent, but April 15th is the date you want to mark on the calendar. Amount is restricted as well. 10 gallons is the maximum amount you can place per bait site. And these bait sites need to be covered and completely covered to prevent access by other critters. The photograph shown now is a typical bear bait stump. The bear hunter would place bait in the stump and then cover it with a large chunk of cookie wood that they call it, a slab of wood in the woods, and then cover that with some large rocks, where a black bear is going to be the only critter that is able to push those rocks off, access the bait. So that's what we talk about, and that's what we mean when we say it needs to be completely covered, inaccessible from other critters. Other folks will dig holes in the ground, place logs over it with rocks, again, restricting access to other critters. We only want the bears accessing the site. The last bullet point talks about no animal parts or byproduct. And what we mean by that is common baits out in the field nowadays really are pretty much candies, pastas, breads, caramel corn's popular, cookies are popular. What we do restrict are animal parts or byproducts, and this includes things like honey, fish, any other carcasses, meat, bones of animals, solid animal fat. Those type of things are restricted. It doesn't include liquid scents. You can still use that, but all the other animal parts and byproducts we're restricting, and we want those baits to abide by that for a number of reasons. The other aspect of the bait I wanted to touch on just briefly is we are asking hunters to try to limit chocolate use on their baits based off of some studies that show some toxicity and can be harmful to several animals, including black bear cubs and black bear, young black bear as well. So we don't have a law to restrict it right now, but certainly it's in the best interest of everybody to try to limit the chocolate use out there and try to abide by that if at all possible. Next slide. First bullet point talks about not shooting a cub or a bear with cubs or a lactating sow. Obviously, we don't want those animals harvested. We are trying to make this an adult bear harvest. And how do we determine that? Well, statutorily, 42 inches is the measurement used to define an adult bear. And that 42 inches is measured in a straight line from the tip of the nose to the base of the tail. How do we make sure that we're only shooting adult bears or 42 inches or greater bear? A lot of folks will cut logs, aspen or birch, something that contracts with that black fur of the bear next to the bait sites or along the trails these bears are using, so that when a bear walks by and steps in front of your log that you know is 42 inches or greater, you know that that's a legal bear to harvest. So a lot of people utilize that, and obviously bears can be deceiving with their fur. They look bigger than they generally are. So make sure you take some precautions and find a way to make sure you're harvesting a bear of legal size. A 6-pack rule for hunting dogs is enforced regardless of the number of bear hunters assisting in the hunt or the training, and regardless of dog ownership. 6 dogs total on the bear hunt, chasing the bear at any one time. Avoid baiting your roadways and trails. We want to avoid the public and avoid these public areas at all costs if we can. So restrictive wise, you can't bait within 50 yards of any trail or campsite road used by the public, or within 100 yards of a roadway having a speed limit of 45 mile an hour or more. We want to restrict or limit any bear car kill program interaction that we have there by placing bait close to a road. So you got to be 100 yards or more from the roadway. Dog collar IDs are required on our dogs. If you're going to be running hounds, you have to have an ID on the collar showing your name and address. Requirement, obviously landowners like Bob talked about are going to find these dogs, or law enforcement wants to know who the dog belongs to. It's a good way to make sure that we can identify and get these dogs back to the right place and the right owner. So that is a requirement as well, having a collar on that dog. And then the last bullet point is it's only legal to hunt bears with dogs in A, B, and D in the north. Statewide, you can train your hounds with dogs, but the hunting only occurs in those northern zones of A, B, and D. Next slide. Real briefly, obviously everybody's going to be out there in the woods soon enough. I thought it was a good time to kind of reiterate some of our hunter safety messages. And obviously the number one is the tab K rules. Treat every firearm as if it was loaded. A, always point the muzzle in a safe direction. B, be sure of your target and what's beyond it. And K, let's keep our finger outside the trigger guard until you're ready to shoot. And obviously we find out that if folks follow these tab K rules, there's generally not a chance where we can find an incident's taking place. It's always when somebody fails to follow one of these tab K rules where we have a hunting incident. And so we're trying to reiterate the tab K rule or acronym, bring that back to people's attention, especially when we're out in the field so much this fall. A brief touch on the tree stand safety stuff. I teach enough hunter safety classes to know that we always want to reiterate, the 3 points of contact when climbing up and down your stand. Let's use these fall arrest or harness systems in case you do make a mistake up there. Use a haul line to haul up your gear and firearm. And obviously, most importantly, let's unload our firearm when we're climbing up or getting down from our tree stand. Super, super important. And I wanted to bring that message home here for everybody. Next slide. Gauging your behavior. This is simply a standard that I set with a lot of my hunter ed classes. I kind of tell the students, use your hand and let each finger represent a standard. If you can answer yes to all these questions, is it safe? Is it legal? Is it sporting? Is it ethical? And does it project a positive image? If you can answer yes to all those, you're probably doing things right. But if you've got a waiver or you can answer no to some of these, it's probably something you shouldn't be doing. We just need hunters to continue to understand that harvesting game is icing on the cake. It's not the end all be all. The hunt is the fun part. The harvesting is icing on the cake. And it's called hunting for a reason. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be challenging and enjoyable at the same time. So if you kind of put that in the back of your mind and think about that, it may point you in the right direction. Next slide. And the last slide here, I talk about again in hunter safety, but I thought it was important to bring up to this group as well, was, what does hunting ethics mean to you? And I think everybody has their own definition of what ethics really means, but I think it's, the best defined as doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason, and kind of thinking about that when you're out in the field. again, might point you in the right direction or might curtail some of your activity. We talk about ethics when it talks about, projecting a positive image, and realizing that not all people are pro hunting, right? There's a small percentage of the public that's pro hunting. There's also a small percentage of the public that's anti-hunting. We get that, we understand that. But the majority of people are in the middle of the spectrum. They're neither pro or anti-hunting. And we ask that, you don't do or say things that pushes that much larger segment of the population to be anti-hunting for something silly that you did or have bad ethics or poor judgment. We want folks to put hunting in a positive light and kind of promote the sport of hunting. And what we mean by that is you're treating your game harvested with respect when talking about it or posting things on the internet. Social media is a big thing now. I have some of our user groups here. They take it upon themselves to brush the fur of the bear out. They wipe the blood off the animal. They roll the tongue back in the mouth to show a little bit of respect for the bear when they're taking their pictures or advocating for their trophies. Certainly not required, but does it hurt showing a little bit more respect for the animal by taking the extra time to present your trophy in a positive light? I think there can probably be some benefits to that. And the last thing I wanted to mention is, a hunter safety statement that I make every year is, if you've ever had the urge to look over your shoulder to see if somebody's watching while you're in the field, you probably just did, or you're about to act in an unethical manner. And I think, even myself included, I can think of times back in my youth where, I can remember specifically looking to see if somebody was watching. And I did something I'm not proud of. And I think everybody has that. And you learn that, through age and maturity that, these are things we want to avoid. So just to kind of stick that home as the last message here is, pay attention to what you're doing out there. There's other people watching. There's cameras all over. Let's not make this an anti-hunting broadcast and show hunting in a negative light, because there's plenty of examples already out there. Let's not add to the list of things that we're not proud of. So use good judgment, put ethics forefront, and be safe out there. That's all I got.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And thanks, Elena. Really, really good job. And Matt, that's a great message to end the webinar with, and a take-home message for all our new hunters out there. Dana or Katie, maybe we do have, hopefully it's a little bit of time for a couple questions if there are any.
We do have 4 quick questions. I'll bounce off y'all. Again, we've run a little over, so I do want to be mindful of the time here. But certainly we've got a few questions in the chat that we do want to hit. Up first, Rob has asked, where is the best place in public land to bear hunt?
Where is the best? I'm assuming he means maybe location in the state for public land to bear hunt. And Elena, you're the Northwoods biologist, if you want to try to address that.
Yeah, we're really blessed in northern Wisconsin that there is a huge host of public land. So not trying to just promote my county, but in Vilas County, there happens to be national forest. There's 40,000 acres of county forest, and there's over 200,000 acres of state forest. There's more Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest to the west of us into Price County. And then there's more national forests also to the east of us in Forest and Florence counties as well. Depending on what method you're using, you'll need different amounts of public land. So if you are running hounds, you're going to need a lot more public land to run to make sure you're not trespassing, compared to if you're running a bait site, you might only need 50 acres that you need to put a bait site on. So those are important things to consider as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Samuel's asked, do folks eat bear, or is it just hunting for sport?
Oh, good question. And maybe I can address that. Maybe I should have in my slide presentation, but yeah, definitely can eat bear. And for our family, that's a big part of what we eat for the rest of the year after we harvest one. And so, very similar to how you would process or handle meat from a deer here in Wisconsin, you can do a lot of the same stuff with bear. From steaks to summer sausage to hamburger, you name it. And a lot of people might not think of it as something you'd want to consume, but there is nothing wrong with eating bear. It's very delicious.
The fat off of a bear is a really neat product too that you can render down and use for frying or cooking pastries and stuff like that's an important utilization of that as well.
Yep.
Wonderful, thank you. Chris has asked, can you use a muzzle loader for bear?
Yes, simple answer is yes, you can.
Wonderful. And last one before we wrap things up, Jim has asked, do you have to have your name on your tree stand and can you leave it out overnight?
Matt, we'll let you answer that one.
Sure, I can jump on that one. It depends on where you're hunting. So on state land, certainly, if you are north of Highway 64, you can leave a stand up overnight, but it does have to have your customer ID number on it. Now, if you start talking about southern Wisconsin, south of 64, there is no overnight allowance of stands up on state lands. The difference is there's national forest lands that have different rules, county forest have different rules. So it depends on where you're hunting. And then once you find out where you're hunting, ask those specific questions to the folks that manage those properties.
All right, Matt, Bob, Elena, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. For those of you who are watching the recording, if you do have any specific questions for Bob, Elena, or Matt, their email addresses are on the screen, or you can also send us an email to dnrpress@wisconsin.gov and we'll help make sure that you get connected in whatever direction you need to be going. So with that, I think we will wrap things up for today. Thank you so much.